Hello all, my name is John,
And I'm Tyler.
and together we are DeLong Rigging Solutions, or DRS for short.
So kicking sheaves is the next thing we're going to go over. The first thing I should do is tell you the difference between a sheave and a block. The sheave is the actual wheel inside of the block. This entire mechanism is a block. That being said, typically you'll hear someone say kick the sheave instead of kick the block. Kicking sheaves is a really common practice in theaters where you can access the grid, where they've got a walkable grid. It allows you to move pipes upstage and downstage to get out of the way of scenery or lighting truss, or anytime you've got something that's too wide to fit in the allotted space, you can kick your sheaves to move your pipes. So first thing you want to do is get tension off of the cable. Actually, the first thing you want to do is make sure your flyman knows where you are. You do not want to be touching one of these when the flyman moves it. And the easiest way to avoid that is make sure you're in constant communication with the flyman. If that's the reason that the flyman's going to yell things like, pipe 23 going out, well, that tells me that this cable right here next to me is about to move. And typically, I'm going to either yell hold, or if I don't mind, I'll just move a little bit and make sure it's not touching me. At any rate, so moving 24, I know this one needs to be at 15.1 instead of its current position. One thing that's really nice about this theater is you'll notice they actually have marked on their grid the distances. So you always know exactly where this is, or rather where it's going to end up. So in order to get tension off this, I'm going to use what's referred to as a pork chop or a Haven's grip. There are a lot of names for these. Pork chop is one of the really common ones. Cable grab, Klein tool. There are a lot of names for these, but the correct term is a Haven's grip. So what I'm going to do with this is I'm actually going to come over here and I'm going to choke it to a ribbon. Now I'm going to go one closer. So once it is choked to that ribbon, I'm going to take it under, and actually I'll show you up here on this cable just so you see how this mechanism works. Is I open the gate, I then push it down like that, and I put the cable in. Always close your gate, and now when you pull up on this, it locks and holds. So I'm going to do that down here under the grid where it's hard to see. And what I'm going to do, once I've got it on there, is I'm going to let it drop down so it's just being held by my strap. So while it's being held down there, I'm going to put some weight on the cable so the cable comes up. But the grip holds it. So basically the cable just runs through that with the grip holding it. Easiest way to do this is just step on the cable. It lifts it up, and now I know that this is pretty slack, which means it's safe for me to work on. So, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to shift my pork chop upstage out of my way. Next, I'm going to take my wrench, which note, all my tools are attached to me. Anytime you're on the grid, everything stays attached. On this particular style of sheave, you're going to have a bolt on the rail side, so on the side that's pointing towards the fly rail, it's going to have a bolt. On the other side, it's just got a clip that captures the channel. So I loosen the bolt on this side, which is not going to work because I only have one wrench on me. Alright, so now that I have all the right tools, which I'm going to take a moment to talk about that. Always have the right tools when you come to the grid. It's a really long climb down when you forget your frickin' wrench. On that note, going back to this process, so I'm going to loosen the bolt on the rail side just enough that it should be able to slide. These things can be temperamental, if you will. but that's part of the nature of having something that's been up here for a while. So I'm just going to loosen it just enough that I feel a little bit of wiggle in the bolt, which I'm starting to feel there. Once I've got that loose, I'm taking both my wrenches, I'm putting them in my pockets, which keep in mind, they are still tied to me, and I am going after the rubber mallet. Which with the rubber mallet, I go ahead and safety that to my wrist, because I do not want to lose this thing. And once it's safetied, you're going to start hitting the shiv on either end. I like to start with the end that's got the solid clamp. Give it a couple hits, hit the other side a couple times. And you're going to notice that the shiv is just slowly walking towards where we want it. And that is about 15-1, which is our magic number for this. Yeah, I'll take it a little more actually. Alright, so now that it's in the right position, what I want you all to look at is how the cable is coming off of the shiv. You want to come straight out of the shiv. Sometimes that means your shiv is not going to be square to the rest of the grid. But at the end of the day, you want to make sure it's coming straight out so you don't start wearing on the sides of the shiv with the cable. Because over time, these cables can cut into your groove and cause you to need to replace the shiv. So we've got this position where we want, so I'm going to go ahead and take my hammer and hang it back up out of the way where it's nice and safe. And I'm going to come down here and I'm going to tighten these the bolt that I just took off, or didn't take off, but loosened. Which once again is probably going to be a little on the temperamental side. It's going back together much easier than it came apart. And with these, you want to make sure they're snug, but you don't want to put gorilla strength on them. Because at the end of the day, someone's going to have to come by and get this off again eventually. So like I said, nice and snug, but no He-Man awards on this. So now that I've kicked my shiv, the next challenge is getting my clamp back. Which I'm not sure how well you can see, but it's down there a ways. So the easiest thing to do is I'm going to have to lay down and get my arm down there to it. Now, you can't tell, but I'm actually laying on the cable to try and pull it up a little bit, and I've loosened it. Once it's loose, I reach down there, I open the gate, and I pull it the rest of the way up. And I take my body off of the cable, and that is now an operational line set. At this point in time, I would yell down to the flymen, something on the lines of check 24, which, I'll go ahead and yell it. On the rail, check 24! He's gonna stand out there for flashlight, look up, and make sure everything looks nice and straight. And that is the basics of moving a shiv. One thing that you should note is, like I said, there are a lot of different styles of shivs. This one's got a hook on the off stage, or the side away from the rail. Here in a second, I'm going to show you one that does not have a hook there, which presents some, shall we say, more unique situations. Alright, the next type of shiv or block that we're going to deal with is an older model, an older style that you really don't see much anymore because it is held in with clamps and J-bolts on both sides. J-bolts are not actually rated hardware, so they do not meet any of the standards. That being said, this is a really common thing that you're going to see, but they do have some drawbacks to them. The biggest one being when you're placing this, it's very easy for the block or shiv to slide towards the head block, resulting in the cable rubbing on the steel right here, which I can see that it's been here for a while because it's actually started to cut into that ribbon, which is definitely something that I would notate if I was doing an inspection. That being said, we're going to kick this shiv a little bit to correct that, but we're not actually going to move it upstage, downstage. We're just going to move it towards stage left or away from the head block. Which the first thing we gotta do, just like on the other style, is get the weight off of it. Which I'm gonna take my pork chop, I'm gonna try not drop it as low as I did last time. I'm gonna do a choke around the ribbon again. I'm gonna drop this down here. And I've already got my gate open. Got it on there. Make sure you close your gate. Don't let it drop down there. And once again, the easiest way is just putting some weight on the cable. Alright. And that has slacked this more than enough. So, what I'm going to do is I'm now going to loosen both of these J-bolts. With the J-bolts, it's very important that you only loosen it as much as you need, because the more play that you have in this, the more likely you're going to make the mistake that we're currently fixing.
You're going that way.
There it goes. Once again, older hardware is a little harder to break sometimes. So we got that one loose. Now I'm going to come over here and I'm going to loosen this one. Alright, now that they're loose, since I don't have any weight on my cable, this is really easy to just slide a little bit. Or, back to the name of kicking, I'm going to come up here and I'm going to just take my boot and kick it a few times. So, I've been kicking it and it doesn't seem to be moving. So at this point in time, I'm going to look at my clips and make sure that, oh, yeah, they were a little on the wedge side. I also can use a rubber mallet instead of my boot, which is technically the recommended method. Actually, give me just a second to get this not mounted, but safety to me. And now I've got safety, and I'm just going to take this and give it some hits. Alright, so right now it's hard to tell exactly where my cable is going to land because the cable is being held up by my pork chop. But if I stand directly over and I look down through the sheave, I'm going to see about where my cable lands. Which right now my cable is going to end up being about 1/4 inch off the ribbon, and I kind of want more than that. So I'm going to once again check and make sure my clamps aren't jammed. That one kind of is, so I'm just going to give it a little tap to get it loosened up. And then I'm going to hit some more. I'm going to keep going until I get this to where it's dropping about in the middle of the ribbon, which I've gotten to that point. So now I'm going to take my mallet and secure it somewhere out of the way. And I'm going to come back down here and I'm going to tighten these. When I tighten these, it's important to keep in mind that this whole system will shift when it takes weight. So what I like to do is I actually will take my J-bolt and I'll go ahead and jam it just a little bit. Which I actually want to jam it this direction. And once I got it jammed, I'm going to tighten that thing down. Which once again, older hardware is harder to turn. But that is solid on that side. One thing to keep in mind with this type of a system is the bolt that is away from the head block is going to be taking most of the force. That's why in this particular system you'll notice that that bolt is a lot larger than the smaller bolt over here. Now, they both are taking the force, but that one's going to be taking the brunt of it. Alright, so now I've got both my bolts tight, which once again, you want to make sure they're good and snug, but don't over crank these because eventually someone's going to have to come back behind you. So now I'm going to go ahead and start working on getting my clamp off, which this time is going to be a little bit trickier because I have more stuff in the way. I'm just going to work on trying to, there we go. Got it broken. And I'm going to bring it up here where I can reach it with both hands. I'm going to open the gate. I'm going to slide it off. Keep in mind that the whole time it's still secured to the grid. I'm going to pull it back up through. And now I'm going to stop and I'm going to look at this and make sure I did in fact fix the problem. My cable's been moved about 1.5 inches away from the ribbon. So it's no longer rubbing. I know that it's still in the same up and down stage plane it should be. So this is a fixed kicked sheave. Which another thing is, make sure you're looking at your cable as it comes off of the sheave. You want to make sure it's coming off square to the sheave, which is not always square to the grid, because you do not want it to be an angle like this where it'll start wearing on things. But yeah, those are the two most common types of sheaves / blocks you're going to see, and that is how you kick them. Please remember that DeLong Rigging Solutions one-shot training videos are meant as general overviews. Every system is different. Every venue has different procedures. All statements made make certain assumptions about systems and venue similarities. Nothing can replace on-site training with a qualified individual. If ever you have a question or concern about rigging, do not hesitate to reach out to us or another qualified vendor in your area.